Today I attended a meeting with Achutanandana and some devotees. They were talking about Krishna consciousness, and none of them have any clue about the direction of management. They're complaining about the GBC. They're like, "What is the responsibility of the GBC? This and that." So I mentioned to them, look up the direction of management. And none of these devotees were, they knew of anything about the direction of management. So that goes to show how much.
We should print out 500,000 copies of it and have it and just hand it out to whomever we meet.
Right.
With a cover letter explaining what it is.
Oh, that's a great idea. Direction.
Yeah.
And now with the case of this Lokanath Swami, he abused some girls, some 13-year-old, 9-year-old. Now they're really in trouble.
That was decades ago.
Yeah. Now they're putting pressure on these people, but they don't know the solution has to be that temple presidents, they elect the GBC, and without that being implemented, the unelected GBC will always be in power unless people wake up.
Well, yeah, because what boiled down is the GBC, when they were created, were fine with it until the book trust was formed with lifelong trustees.
Right.
And they said, well, what are we? Second class? We're running the whole movement. We have to be elected. And the book trust people are lifetime appointees. They should be working under us, and we should be lifetime appointees. They just couldn't stand the idea that Prabhupada wanted the GBC to be a flexible, growing thing, and the BBT trustees to have complete control of his book. Because their book selling was such big business, they didn't want a group called the BBT trustees. They wouldn't want people like BBT trustees to control their access to books. That was the whole thing. The BBT would print the books, warehouse the books, and distribute the books to the temples, and the temples would pay for the books. And that was as far as it went. They had no control over the books. They could not print their own books. They could not warehouse their own books. It was all being done it would all be done by the BBT trustees. And they just felt it was just too much control to put in 5 or 10 people's hands, that much control over a huge movement. That just doesn't make sense to them. And you can sort of understand why they would think that. But at the same time, Prabhupada's goal was that his books not be changed. And the only way he could think of keeping them from being changed is put people he trusted in charge of managing the books so they wouldn't be changed.
Yes.
That was the BBT.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now I'm looking at it with hindsight. I'm being stuck here in Sacramento. I can see if I let these people control things, they'll screw things up.
And they have.
And they have. And somehow or other, we're keeping them at bay by, somehow or other talking about these things.
Well, there's KBI, Krishna Books International, which is publishing original books.
Yes, KBI, they're printing original books, but one thing is that Srila Prabhupada wanted the original books to be printed and half of the money going towards printing of books and half towards temple buildings and facilities and things like that. I'm not sure how much of that is going on with Veda Guya Prabhu,
Mm-hmm.
That was right down Narayan Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada's original idea for the BBT was
created as the result of a lawsuit.
Yes.
A lawsuit which I was deeply involved with. And essentially, Hansadutta was the only BBT trustee still alive. Well, actually, maybe Bhagavan was still alive at that time, but he was still alive. He was a BBT trustee, had every authority to act as the BBT. But he didn't realize it, and his attorney didn't realize it, or didn't work in that direction. So it ended up that Hansadutta won the lawsuit. Then his attorney added a whole bunch of trustees. Those trustees voted out Hansadutta, sort of like what happened to you in Sacramento in reverse.
Yeah.
They voted out Hansadutta. Then Gupta and Vedaguya got rid of all the other trustees. So then they owned Krishna books themselves, which was not supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's the same thing happened here in Sacramento. They plotted against me and then tried to usurp the Lakshmi and give it to,
Yeah, unfortunately, in this case, it worked.
Yeah, it didn't work, right? And
Well, with Gupta and Vedaguya, it did work. They ended up with sole control of Prabhupada's books.
yes.
And then Jita Radhi was printing books in China.
Yes. Yes. Try.
The Hansadutta had this was capable of fantastic thinking sometimes. And he thought, well, it doesn't matter because with the original books, we'll distribute them all over the place. The change books will have no value because nobody will want them. But they didn't realize how much political power and effort was behind the change books, that they even, part of the deal was making Jayadvaita a lifetime BBT trustee. And I said, why on earth would you allow Jayadvaita, of all people, to be a BBT trustee? He said, well, because it's all good. They're BBT. Now that we have BBTI with the original books, BBT will be gone pretty soon anyhow.
Wow.
That was his thinking. And then Gupta, his attorney, changed sides and began working for ISKCON instead of working for Hansadutta. So they made a quick compromise to close the case, where Hansadutta essentially got royally screwed because his lawyer royally screwed him. And that was it.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting how everything happened at your house, and you were guiding them. At the same time, he was not listening to you.
I was trying to guide him, but, Gupta and Hansadutta were working closely together, and Gupta, the last thing he wanted was for me to be deeply involved in the case, because he knew I would see through the situation.
Just like you saw through the situation here.
Yeah. Well, apparently that's not that hard to do.
We got Priyanshi.